Good morning. On behalf of my wife, Susan, my daughter, Jenna, my daughter, Jessica, who's sitting here besides me as my standby audio teleprompter, my son-in-law, PJ, my grandson, Daniel, with whom I share a birthday, with both of us born on the 4th of November, I want to wish each and every one of you a happy, healthy, and sweet 5783. Last year, as you may recall, I introduced you to my parents and shared with you that my parents had little or no interest in Judaism, but had a lot of interest in gambling and betting. It's going to get better. This year, I will share with you how my parents, and especially my mother, even with her ambivalence towards Judaism, instilled in me the importance of supporting Temple Emanu-El. I will also share with you this morning some really terrific facts and figures about Temple Emanu-El, about how vibrant Temple Emanu-El is. And because that vibrancy is so much a result of our young members, this year, more than ever, we need your support. But before we get there, I want to reintroduce my parents, my mother's improbable friendship with Rabbi Hertzberg, and it's only because of that improbable friendship that I'm standing up here as your current president, giving this year's holiday pitch. So let me start at the beginning. Jack Heidenberg was born in Brooklyn in 1904. Sylvia Gordon was born somewhere in New York City in 1915. Neither one graduated high school, and they were married in 1941. Jack and Sylvia worked hard, lived hard, and played hard. And to the 21st century observer, they would be almost unrecognizable. And let me share with you a few vignettes of what I'm talking about. Jack and Sylvia did not go to work every day. They, like other New Yorkers of their generation, went to business every day. Jack always wore a dark suit, tie, and tie pin. Sylvia always wore heels and never wore pants. When he wasn't at business, Jack golfed and occasionally played handball. Sylvia played no sports, never worked out, and bought her first pair of sneakers when she turned 70. Jack and Sylvia never, ever had a glass of wine. Jack only drank scotch and smoked cigars morning, noon, and night. Sylvia only drank bourbon and smoked unfiltered Chesterfields morning, noon, and night. Hang in there. And then one day, after smoking Chesterfields for about 50 years, Sylvia comes to me and says, "Robert, it's time to get healthy. I'm going to give up those Chesterfields." And I said, "Mom, that's great. Really proud of you." And she says, with absolute dead earnestness, "Thank you. I'm now smoking Marlboros." Jack never carried a credit card. Growing up poor, he only wanted to carry a wad of cash in his pocket. Venmo would not have worked for Jack. And so when Sylvia wanted to go shopping, and Jack asked her how much money she needed, and just like that scene in Goodfellas, Sylvia said, "About this much." Jack also had a huge amount of what we used to call street smarts, and today social scientists call EQ. So I have no doubt Jack would have been valedictorian in his graduating class at the University of Hard Knocks. And so when Jack had a problem with workers in his factory or with goods disappearing off the back of a truck, he enlisted the help of his good friend Milton, whose business card read labor consultant. to help resolve the issue with the workers and to retrieve those lost goods. Now, there are only two things I remember about Milton. The first is that he also smoked cigars morning, noon, and night. And the second is that when I was 11 years old, I was taller than Milton, as was his third wife, by at least 10 inches. Milton's own Evita Perón. And in the Hollywood version, Milton is played by Lee Strasberg. In 1931, Sylvia went to work in my grandfather's knitting factory down on Worcester Street in Soho. Sylvia's first job was collecting money from all the workers for a game called The Numbers. For those of you unfamiliar with The Numbers, this is what the lottery was called before it became a line item on the New York State budget. And as my mother later explained to me, it was a racket largely controlled by the boys up there in Harlem. During our first trip to Dorado Beach in Puerto Rico, circa 1966, we had family dinner at 7, and at 9, Sylvia gave her 8-year-old son, that's me, a key to the room, told me to have fun with my friends, and she and Jack entered their sacred space, the casino. At breakfast the next morning, with Sylvia puffing on her Chesterfield, she says to me, "Robert, last night was a great night. I held the dice for 45 minutes, and all the men were cheering and shouting, 'Sylvia, Sylvia, Sylvia.'" Hubris was not in short supply. 17 years later, Susan did not bargain for all that hubris when she said from under the chuppah, "I do." And all cards on the table, Robert was caught flat-footed. Okay, so with all of this, and trust me, there's a lot left on that cutting room floor. So with all of this, you may be wondering, or at least I hope you're wondering, how in the world did my mother instill in me the importance of supporting Temple Emanu-El? Well, the answer is actually quite simple. It's because of Rabbi Arthur Hertzberg, who was the rabbi here at Temple Emanu-El from the early 1960s into the late 1980s, and was one of the premier authorities on the history of Zionism. And so it was Rabbi Hertzberg who figured out which of his rabbinic superpowers would work best on Sylvia. And so when the temple needed money, Sylvia and Hertzberg, and that's how she always referred to him, it was always just Hertzberg, didn't matter that he was this renowned scholar, didn't matter that he was the rabbi here at Temple Emanu-El, to Sylvia, he was just Hertzberg. And so, so when the temple needed money, they would get together on a Sunday morning. And the great thing about these two Jewish gladiators is that neither one needed any practice swings. And so, with Sylvia puffing on her Chesterfields, Hertzberg explains to Sylvia why the temple needs money and asks her to write a meaningful check. But because Sylvia was genetically wired never to accept the first offer, whether she was dealing with Hertzberg or the maitre d' at Le Cirque, there ensued a few minutes of verbal jousting, with each gladiator relying heavily on a well-worn playbook. With Hertzberg saying, "You know, Sylvia, if I can't count on you, who can I count on?" And Sylvia firing back, "You know, Arthur, money doesn't grow on trees." But this jousting didn't last long, and sure enough, after a few minutes, Sylvia pulls out that checkbook, writes that meaningful check, and Hertzberg is on his way, his unblemished winning streak remaining completely intact. And in this Hollywood version, our two gladiators are played by Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. But I also have to give my mother mega kudos for always sending me a calendar invite so I could always be there in the room where it happened, watching and learning how that chopped liver is made. And as time went by, I came to realize that for me, I wanted my Judaism to be more than just a contact sport. With that said, in June of 1994, I found myself in another room where it happened. And that room was Eric Holzer's dining room, where we were having one of our first meetings to talk about and plan for our move from Englewood to Closter. In addition to Eric at that meeting, in that dining room, there was Harris Shapiro, Charlie Klatskin, thank you, Jess, Charlie Klatskin, Gabe Schisler, Shep Goldfein, and several others. And it was at that meeting that we all agreed that we wanted to build a spectacular synagogue and fill that spectacular synagogue with people of all ages, but especially young people. Well, I am happy to report that Gabe is here today smiling, Shep is here today smiling, Eric, Charlie, and Harris are smiling from up above, because that dream has come true. This is the synagogue where it happens. So now let me give you the morning report, and it's really impressive. We have 261 kids enrolled in religious school, the more than at any time in recent memory. We have 113 families that have joined Temple Emanu-El in about the last 15 months. And about 70 of those families having joined in just the last 3 months. We have many, many multi-generational families, mine included, with Daniel being our 4th generation. And you also heard about my friend Robin Miller earlier today as they were introduced for an ark opening, and them being and their family being a 4th generation. And the only thing that I can say is that my mother would definitely not have been Grandma Bubbles. Plenty of other things. And in addition to all these wonderful statistics, I have to say that here at Temple Emanu-El, we have Tach Shabbat services, Purim festivals, Hanukkah festivals, all overflowing with people of all ages, but especially young people. We have trips to Israel and other Jewish ports of call overflowing with people of all ages, but especially young people. And I can go on, but I think you get my drift. And I don't think it's an exaggeration for me to say that with respect to our operations here at Temple Emanu-El, we are crushing it. We are doing really well. But we need your support because all our new young families, quite frankly, pay the least and in many respects need the most. So we're not asking for your support because we're struggling. Obviously, that's not the case. But we want to ensure that our families, that our young families have an experience that allows them to stay here forever and ever. We want to make sure that my Daniel is here for many years to come. So I can go on with these statistics. I encourage each and every one of you to please reach out to my good friend, my pal for life, Rabbi Kirshner, because he can give you lots more statistics as to exactly where we're going to put that money. And if you include a meal with Rabbi Kirshner, I guarantee you he will be there. So finally, folks, I encourage you, and please asking all of you, write that meaningful check, push that meaningful button on Venmo, or give us that meaningful wad of cash. Or if you'd like, make that meaningful payment monthly. We'll figure out how to make that work. Thank you very much. Lador Vador. Shana Tova.